the document behind a failed state. Coup after coup after coup after coup. The dilemma of a democracy. This is why Pakistan has collapsed, as Asim Munir seizes power in Pakistan again.
Hello and welcome. You're watching Explained by NewsX with me, Uday Pratap Singh. Today we examine a troubling paradox, a constitution that is supposed to be the supreme law of the land and yet in practice is treated like a rubber stamp, repeatedly bypassed, suspended or rewritten. We turn to the case of Pakistan. Pakistan's proposed 27th constitutional amendment bill, tabled in the Senate on 8th of November 2025, has sparked debate amongst legal experts and political observers. The bill could fundamentally alter the country's judicial structure. However, the Pakistani government insists it is aimed at reforming and modernizing the justice system. Let's look at what this amendment proposes, and viewers can decide for themselves. The biggest proposition is establishment of a new Federal Constitutional Court, or FCC, shifting key powers away from the Supreme Court. FCC would take over cases involving constitutional interpretation, intergovernmental disputes, and issues under Article 199. Article 199 of the Constitution of Pakistan gives the High Courts the power to issue writs that are orders that protect citizens' rights and hold the government accountable. It allows anyone to directly approach the High Court if their fundamental rights are violated or if a public authority acts unlawfully. The court can then compel an officer to perform their duty, stop them from exceeding their powers, or declare their actions void. This means the FCC would become the primary forum for constitutional matters previously handled by the Supreme Court. Lawyers have pointed out that in the new draft, the oaths and references to judges place the FCC above the Supreme Court. The Chief Justice of the FCC would also rank higher and retire at 68 compared to the current retirement age of 65 for the Supreme Court judges. 27th Constitutional Amendment Bill under the new setup, the Supreme Court would be limited to hearing civil, criminal and statutory appeals. This change would make the Supreme Court a Supreme District Court in practical terms. It proposes to revisit revenue sharing via the National Financial Commission Award, reducing provincial constitutional protection of their share, and perhaps returning subjects like education and population planning from provinces to the federal government. The amendment also proposes restoring executive magistrates, which suggests restoring a classic colonial era institution and removing the requirement of consent from a judge before transfer of High Court judges. The insertion of a new Chapter 1A in the Constitution tightens executive control over the superior judiciary through expanded powers to transfer High Court judges and establishes an FCC empowered by disempowering the Supreme Court. The final and one of the most major amendments would be revisions to Article 243 of the Constitution. It stated that the federal government shall have control and command of the armed forces of Pakistan, and the supreme command of the armed forces shall vest in the president. Under the draft, the role of the army chief would be elevated into a new chief of defense forces post. The post of chairman Joint Chiefs of Staff Committee would be abolished, and the military chain of command would be constitutionally reordered. But the government argues that these changes are needed to modernize the defense command structure, to reflect changing strategic threats and to streamline institutional bottlenecks. But critics argue that these amendments threaten civilian oversight of the military, undermine provincial autonomy, and hollow out judicial independence. One lawyer described the 27th Amendment as a complete constitutional surrender. So in short, the 27th Amendment is a major package of constitutional engineering, not just tweaking minor points. It seeks to reshape how power is distributed amongst the Federation, the judiciary and the military. But this is not the first time that the Constitution of Pakistan is being amended like this. It is repeatedly suspended, abrogated or altered by extra-constitutional means that are the coups. Pakistan became a republic when its first constitution was approved in 1956, but this was abrogated in 1956 after a military coup d'etat. Pakistan's second constitution was approved in 1962. It granted executive power to the president and abolished the office of the prime minister. It also institutionalized this intervention of military in politics by providing that for 20 years, the president or the defense minister must be a person who had held a rank not lower than that of lieutenant general. In the army, the 1962 constitution was suspended in 1969 and abrogated in 1972. Let's try to dive deeper into this history. The Constitution of 1956 was the fundamental law of Pakistan from March 1956 until the 1958 Pakistani coup d'etat. It was the first constitution adopted by independent Pakistan. There were 234 articles, 13 parts and 6 schedules On 7th October 1958, President Iskandar Mirza staged a coup d'etat. He abrogated the constitution, imposed martial law, and appointed General Muhammad Ayub Khan as the Chief Martial Law Administrator and Aziz Ahmed the Secretary General and Deputy Chief Martial Law Administrator. However, 3 weeks later, General Ayub, who had been openly questioning the authority of the government prior to the imposition of martial law, deposed Iskandar Mirza on 27th October 1958 and assumed the presidency, which practically formalized the militarization of the political system in Pakistan. The Constitution of 1962 was the fundamental law of Republic of Pakistan from 8 June 1962 until martial law was declared in 25th March 1969. The second martial law was imposed on 25th March 1969 by General Agha Muhammad Yahya Khan. This happened after General Ayub Khan handed over power to the Army Commander-in-Chief and not the Speaker of the National Assembly as laid down by the Constitution. On assuming the presidency, General Yahya Khan acceded to popular demands by abolishing the one-unit system in West Pakistan on 1st July 1970 and ordered general elections on the principle of one man, one vote. The present Constitution of Pakistan is also known as the 1973 Constitution. It was drafted by the government of Zulfikar Ali Bhutto. With additional assistance from the country's opposition parties, it was unanimously approved by the 5th Parliament on 10th April and ratified on 14th August 1973. The 1973 Constitution itself continued to be overridden, first under the coup of 1977 and then in 1999. The 1977 Pakistani military coup was the second military coup in the history of Pakistan. Taking place on 5th July 1977, it was carried out by Muhammad Zia-ul-Haq, the Chief of Army Staff, overthrowing the government of Prime Minister Zulfikar Ali Bhutto. In announcing the coup, Zia did three things on priority. He promised free and fair elections within 90 days. He arrested Bhutto and his ministers, as well as other leaders of both the PPP and the PNA. And the last but the most important, in fact, was that he suspended the constitution and imposed martial law. A four-member military council made up of Zia-ul-Haq as Chief Martial Law Administrator, the Chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff Committee, and the Chief of Navy and Air Force took over government operations in the country. The 1999 military takeover in Pakistan was a bloodless coup d'etat initiated by Chief of Army Staff General Parvez Musharraf. On 14th October, General Musharraf, acting as the country's chief executive, issued a controversial provisional order that suspended the Constitution of Pakistan. When the Constitution of Pakistan is suspended during a coup or under martial law, it means that the fundamental rights of citizens effectively ceases to exist, at least in any enforceable sense. The 27th Amendment Bill is a clear erosion of civilian supremacy. When the Constitution is altered to strengthen military command or elevate the army chief, civilian oversight is weakened. The amendment formally embeds the military more deeply into constitutional structure. Moreover, clearly, judicial independence in Pakistan is under threat. The proposal to create a constitutional court, shift judge transfer powers and restore executive magistrate threatens the separation of powers. If judges can be transferred without consent, they are vulnerable to executive influence. To sum it up, when constitutions are weak, when amendments are used instrumentally, the institutional foundations of governance become shaky. Future governments or military regimes may feel justified in again overriding or bypassing the constitution. For Pakistan's citizens and its civil society, though, this moment is crucial. When a constitution is under revision, when power relations are shifting, public scrutiny, debate, and transparency matter.
The document behind a failed state. Coup after coup after coup after coup. The dilemma of a democracy. This is why Pakistan has collapsed, as Asim Munir seizes power in Pakistan again.